That's how I want it. Smushed face version to a bar.
Good evening.
You ever see that movie? Oh,
I'm gonna have to see it now.
We're about ready to get started.
Good evening and welcome. Thank you for taking the time to be here tonight. We appreciate you showing up and being part of the process. For the record, it's July 17th, 2025, and the time is 6:30 p.m. I'll begin with a roll call, so council, when I call your name, please say here or present. Mayor Maxton.
Here.
Councilmember Stroop is not present. Councilmember Roden.
Here.
Olvera.
Here.
Pearson is not present. Parker
Here.
and Swareg.
Here.
With 5 members of council present, a quorum is declared.
Thank you, Christina. Would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Appreciate everybody being here tonight. As a reminder to all, we do live broadcast this meeting, and would like to welcome everybody that's joining us here in the meeting room tonight and all those that are joining us by live broadcast. If you do get an opportunity to speak as part of the meeting tonight, for those that are here in the room, I ask that you use the microphone that's up here at the podium. And the reason for that is the individuals that are listening to us by live broadcast cannot hear the comments unless they're spoken from the microphone at the podium. And we want to keep everybody included with all the comments of what's going on here, those that are as part of the live broadcast. And then last, if you do get an opportunity to speak, I'd like for you to introduce yourself. If you're a resident, please state whether you're a Fair Oaks Ranch resident or not, or if you're with an agency that's here tonight, just which agency that you're here from. And with that, we'll move on to our citizens to be heard tonight. As a reminder, as part of our Citizens to be Heard Forum, in accordance with the Open Meetings Act, council may not discuss or take action on any item which has not been posted on the agenda. And speakers should, I ask that all speakers limit their comments to 5 minutes or less. And we have one individual that did sign up to speak tonight, and that's Mike Lovelace. Mr. Lovelace.
Good evening, I'm Mike Lovelace. I'm a resident of Fair Oaks Ranch. Mr. Mayor, council members, I'd also like to acknowledge my fellow residents in the room and those watching online. This information is as much for you as it is for council. As I said, my name is Mike Lovelace and I'm a resident here. My wife is obviously also a resident here. Full disclosure, she is an employee of the city, and I'm the treasurer for Fair Oaks Ranch's Municipal Development District. I'm also a certified public accountant, and throughout my career, I have analyzed multi-million-dollar decisions for corporate clients, and as a result of that, I pay very close attention to financial policies and proposed changes here on the ranch. I'm here this evening to speak to you about something that seems to come up every few years: a handful of vocal over 65-year-old residents clamoring for some kind of relief on their city property taxes. With luck, I will live here much longer after I turn 65 than I lived here before I turned 65. And so as a result, I'm arguing tonight against my own personal financial interests, but for what I believe is in the best interest of all of the residents of Fair Oaks Ranch. Just like each council member is an at-large member, they are expected to consider the needs for all of Fair Oaks Ranch residents, not just those who come to council meetings or who opine on Nextdoor. Those over 65 who are asking for special treatment are asking for a property tax freeze or an even bigger exemption than the extra $50,000 they get today. Keep in mind, freezes are forever. They cannot be repealed in the state of Texas. In theory, increased exemptions could be removed, but once they are granted, that is politically unlikely. Those arguing for either freezes or increased exemptions are doing so in their own financial interest, while requesting that those under 65 necessarily pay more. Our city has chosen to remain true to its founding, a bedroom community. That means we avoid significant business growth. That also means our city is more dependent on residential property taxes than other cities. For comparison's sake, according to the current year budgets posted on our city website, 64% of Fair Oaks' non-interest revenue will come from property taxes. Compare that to the city of Bernie. According to their website, they get just 21% of their non-interest revenue from property taxes. At your last meeting, a citizen to be heard who is a realtor was complaining that we at the ranch don't offer the same property tax perks to seniors that Bernie does. That's why Bernie can afford to do that, because they are dramatically less dependent on property taxes than we are. Fair Oaks Ranch absolutely cannot, nor should it, offer that same kind of advantage to our senior citizens that Bernie does. In the last several years, our city has been blessed with growth as more people learn how truly special it is to live here. Keep in mind the average home in Fair Oaks Ranch has a taxable value of $683,000. And while household incomes and net worths vary, there are very few truly destitute people who live here. I'm going to focus on single-family residences because those are the ones that generate the overwhelming majority of the city's revenue. That's reflected at the top of the handout I passed out a moment ago. While our city has grown steadily, as shown on the graph on the handout, from 3,679 in 2021 to 4,100 in 2024, that represents an increase of 12%. The number, come on in, don't be bashful. Hey, Steve. The number of 65-plus households has increased even higher than that, 14.7%. In other words, the number of 65-plus households has increased at a faster rate than the overall total. Currently, 65-plus households constitute 37.8% of all households in Fair Oaks, so almost 40%. Now let's take a look at a typical 65-plus Bexar County property tax bill. I recognize we have 3 counties, didn't try to do all 3, so Bexar County only. In 2024, the city's portion of their tax bill came to just 22%, so about $1,500 of their total tax bill. Keep in mind, that's on an average $683,000 house. School districts often choose to freeze their taxes for 65-plus households because typically they don't have students living in them. Otherwise, they would never vote for another increase. In contrast, 65-plus households consume roughly the same amount of city services as households under 65. Very quickly, let's compare what a typical 65-plus household looks like compared to a typical under 65. And again, typical is really dangerous, and I understand that, but in general, these are things that those groups have in common. 65-plus, and again, you've got it on your handout there, has a $5,000 exemption. That's the same as under 65, but they also have a $50,000 exemption on top of that. So they have 11 times the exemption value that under 65s do already. Typically, much higher net worth, generally a lower household income, of course, if they're not working anymore. Typically, their mortgage is paid off, although not always. They do have access to reverse mortgages to assist with cash flow, and those school district taxes and county taxes are frozen. And generally, if you're blessed with longevity, that means for 20 or more years that those bills are frozen. Under 65s have it a lot rougher financially. Lower net worth, certainly higher household income, paying 1, sometimes 2 mortgages, if that's what it took to get you here. Your taxes from the school district and the county are not frozen. They go up every year. If you're really lucky, you're still paying off your own student loans. You're probably saving for your kids' college. Occasionally, you're still helping your adult kids. Potentially, you've got multiple car loans. Of course, who can forget youthful driver, car insurance premiums, kids' activities of all kinds, daycare, and sometimes taking care of senior parents. So, like I mentioned at the top, I'm not yet 65. I'm looking forward to the day when my school taxes and my county taxes are frozen. But I knew when I bought my house that my city taxes would not be frozen or discounted with special treatment exemptions. When you're considering whether to extend a senior freeze or increasing the senior exemption beyond the current exemption, which is 11 times what the under 65s receive, please consider all of the above facts. Don't arbitrarily pick winners and losers. Don't increase the burden on some households in order to give a break to others. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for your comments, and thank you for being here tonight. Mr. Lovelace was the only individual that signed up to speak as part of Citizens to be Heard. Is there anyone else here tonight that didn't get an opportunity to sign up that would like to speak? Okay, I do have one letter that was submitted by a resident and asked to be read here at the council meeting. The letter was submitted by Arnaldo Medina. He is a Fair Oaks Ranch resident. And he writes, Dear Mayor and City Council members, thank you for the opportunity to speak through written comments to be read into the record of the next City Council meeting as my public comment. My name is Arnaldo Medina. My family and I are longtime residents of Raintree Woods and Fair Oaks Ranch at 8527 Aladar Circle, 78015. I am submitting my public comment on the July 3rd, 2025 agenda workshop item number 15 relating to the flock security cameras that have been preliminary installed throughout the city entrances and at main intersections near well-established gated neighborhoods of the city. I want to express my concern about the installation and use of these cameras without advance public input, request, or establishing a need. According to a recent local article, Fair Oaks Ranch is identified as one of the top 4 safest cities in Texas. I'm requesting that the City Council and/or city staff provide some credible and objective information and data to justify the expense, the upkeep, training, maintenance, and encroachment of privacy rights and interest of all residents and visitors and contractors that utilize city streets for all manner of legal, normal, and personal private reasons. I am concerned about the reasoning, if any, and justification for the objectively warranted need that cleared the way to proceed with the installation of these cameras that are collecting data even now as part of the initial validation and commissioning of the system prior to the official activation and ongoing utilization to identify and track the presumed innocent and legally authorized activity of individuals in this community. The Flock Camera Company website purports to be sensitive to privacy concerns and notes that the data it collects through its cameras is automatically deleted after 30 days. However, that does not address the issue of customers, in this case the city, accessing the data from the cloud and downloading each video and archiving it for its own use and potential misuse for any variety of reasons. Will the city maintain a policy and strict instructions to utilize the same 30-day window for surveillance videos of residents' private activities? Is the Flock enhanced surveillance system going to be used on tracking cars, trucks, and commercial vehicles, or is it also going to track golf carts and bicyclists and pedestrians that utilize these thoroughfares? According to the Flock Safety website, the enhanced surveillance system is capable of searching for a broad variety of vehicles by filtering for a vehicle body type, and these include, under cars, it can be coupe, a hatchback, convertible, sedan, and wagon. It'll also be SUVs, a pickup, truck, a van, minivan, or work van, a semi-truck, a bus, a motorcycle, a golf cart, a trailer, or a bicycle. That seems like an overbroad and excessive level of surveillance for all manner of vehicles for the 4th safest city in all of Texas. A city that received that ranking without such an extensive enhanced surveillance and tracking system in place. Will law-abiding residents be provided the opportunity to opt out of this enhanced surveillance and tracking program before it is live and commissioned to gather private data? If law-abiding residents will not be provided this complete opt-out opportunity, then will the city at least be providing the various homeowners associations and the Fair Oaks Ranch Homeowners Association the option to offer HOA members the Flock Safety Safe List? According to the Flock Safety website, the Safe List allows neighborhood residents to self-register their vehicle license plates in their neighborhood's Flock Safety system, allowing footage of a resident's vehicle to be marked as resident. By self-registering as a resident, you have the ability to opt out and have any footage of your vehicle automatically deleted. This removes the vehicle from footage and keeps it out of the search. Since Forehawk covers a majority of the neighborhoods areas in the city, this would potentially be a good compromise option for residents that are similarly concerned about the enhanced tracking tool that for the vast majority of time will be capturing private law-abiding activity. Will the city establish a citizen oversight board for the development of the policy and guidance document to lay out the parameters for proper and improper use of enhanced surveillance video footage of law-abiding residents of the community? With limited resources and revenue primarily drawn from the residential families, elderly retirees, and disabled veterans, this new community surveillance effort seems ill-conceived, inappropriate, and a wasteful use of tax dollars garnered for dutiful, paid, hard earnings of local resident taxpayers. I am submitting my comments on Independence Day in the hopes that this is also a reminder of the freedoms and rights that we are privileged to enjoy and that should not be easily or lightly given up for the ease of policy surveillance of city residents. I'm requesting a response to my inquiry with substantive, city-specific information about these baseline concerns. I urge the city to utilize sensible, resident, and privacy-focused rules and policy for the use, limited access, and systemic deletion of surveillance videos collected by the Flock camera system. Alternatively, I urge the city to reconsider the use of the Flock camera system in our city altogether. Respectfully submitted, Arnaldo Medina, Attorney at Law. And that completes our citizens and guest forum for tonight. And with that, we'll move on to our presentation. And we have one special presentation tonight, which is the recognition of our city's Employee of the Quarter.
That is correct. Thank you, Mayor. So tonight I am proud to be able to announce our Employee of the Quarter for Q3 of this year, which goes from the April month through the end of June. And this quarter, our winner or our elected designee is Mr. William Poole. Will, if you'll come stand up here next to me while we recognize you.
Yay.
On this side. So tonight, obviously, I do have the pleasure of being able to recognize Will as one of our own, who has not only stepped up in his new role as the water supervisor, but he has kind of sprinted and climbed and really just dug his claws in to problem solve in different areas as he's learning his new role. Will received not just one highly detailed recommendation, but two for this Employee of the Quarter nomination. Through those, basically he's the guy that everyone here calls when they need the job done. When the job seems like it's too hard or impossible, or there's not a clear-cut solution, or the time is short, Will has become one of those people that has the answer. So what he got nominated for most recently was he helped with salvaging a main water line. Salvage a water main relocation. Sorry, I got that backwards. That was tied to the TxDOT Cibolo Creek Bridge project. Through this, what he did as part of this project, the solution that he came up with saved the city a significant amount of money. It could have cost the city potentially over $50,000, but thanks to his resourcefulness and his coordination and just staying late and being present and finding a smart workaround through this process, they were able to resolve the issue and do this workaround in days for something that could have potentially taken a week or longer. The other nomination that we want to applaud Will for is overseeing two maintenance projects on our water tanks. So they were at the different well sites. He did some electronic improvements at those sites while continuing to manage his supervisor duties in the daily operations and just leading his crew through all that. He found some opportunities for some long-term system improvements during that and was able to minimize water waste during this, obviously, some of these drought conditions that we've seen here historically, and has managed to do that while staying projects on task and under budget and with all of those things, which we all know is a difficult task in and of itself. So through these nominations, he was described as a steady leader and a forward thinker and just somebody whose contributions were really just nothing short of outstanding in this last quarter. So on behalf of the city and our teams, we do just want to thank Will for his dedication and leadership, not only to his team, but to the city of Fair Oaks Ranch. So join me in congratulating Will on Employee of the Quarter. And as always, we have his little certificate, and then I'll grab my phone and get a good picture of him.
Tell you, Will, it was hard for me just to not start clapping when I heard that you saved us 50 grand, man.
Team effort, not just me.
And tumble.
That's right.
All right.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Will. And that completes the presentations that we had on the agenda tonight. With that, we'll move on to our consent agenda. We have 4 items on consent for tonight. First is the approval of the July 3rd, 2025 regular city council meeting minutes. Second, approval of the second reading of an ordinance amending the City of Fair Oaks Ranch Code of Ordinances, Chapter 9, Personnel, Article 9.03, Police Department, and Section 9.03.004, Chief of Police. Third, approval of the second reading of an ordinance approving a First Amendment to the 2024 franchise agreement with Frontier Texas Ventures, LLC for the collection, the hauling, and disposal of municipal solid waste and recyclable materials in the city of Fair Oaks Ranch. And last, approval of a resolution reappointing the Fair Oaks Ranch Municipal Court presiding and alternate judges for 2 years, beginning October 1st, 2025, and ending September 30th, 2027, authorizing the expenditure of the required funds and authorizing the execution of any and all applicable documents by the city manager to effectuate the resolution. Is there any council member that would like to move any of these items from consent to consideration? And could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Jonathan in a second. Ruben. All in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved. We do have a public hearing scheduled for our council meeting tonight, and it is on the proposed amendments to the land use assumptions, the capital improvement plans, and focused on the water and wastewater impact fees. And Christine, I have the time now is 6:54, and I am opening the public hearing. And I'll turn it over to Grant for a presentation.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'm Grant Watanabe, Public Works Director. Texas Local Government Code Chapter 395 requires cities and political subdivisions imposing an impact fee to update their land use assumptions and capital improvement plans, which are used in the calculation of impact fees at least every 5 years. The city's water and wastewater impact fees were last updated and adopted in March of 2020, and therefore are due for an update. The update requires a public hearing on proposed amendments to the land use assumptions, capital improvement plans, and impact fees prior to adoption, which is the reason we are here. Following the public hearing, there is a related agenda item regarding a proposed ordinance amending the land use assumptions, capital improvement plan, and impact fees for your consideration. The impact fee report prepared by Freese and Nichols is attached to this agenda item as Exhibit A. There were no changes to the report since it was previously provided on June 5th, other than removing draft from the cover. In addition, the short presentation that you'll see tonight is fairly similar to the presentation that was provided during the workshop back on June 5th. It is a little bit shorter now that we've moved some of the slides to backup. And now with that, I'll like to introduce Jessica Vassar from Freese and Nichols to walk us through the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am Jessica Vassar with Freese and Nichols. I know that you've seen a lot of the information here before, but feel free to stop me if there are any questions as I go through the presentation. For impact fees, the main components that we have to look at are land use assumptions over a 10-year time period, development of capital improvements plan for water and wastewater, conducting impact fee calculations, stakeholder meetings with your Capital Improvements Advisory Committee throughout the process, and then finally, the approval and adoption of the impact fee ordinance. This is a look at the water and wastewater service areas for the city of Fair Oaks Ranch. These are the areas where you are allowed to charge impact fees for new development. And this, for impact fees, we have to look at future land use over a 10-year time period. And this is the future land use plan that was adopted by the city's comprehensive plan, so it's consistent with city planning documents. And in addition to knowing what type of development we're going to be seeing in the future, we also need to know where that development is going to be located. And that's what we're showing on these maps here. The red parcels are parcels where we already have customers, so those will not have any future development. The blue areas are areas that we anticipate will grow in the next 10 years, and those are going to be driving our impact fee CIP. And the green areas are areas that we don't anticipate any growth until the build-out time period, so beyond the 10 years and outside of this study period. For our growth projections, we have about a 2% growth rate for the water service area, and it's just slightly different on the wastewater service area since it's a little bit smaller of an area, but we're looking at about a 2% annual growth rate over the 10-year time period. We also use this information to calculate water demands and wastewater flow projections, and that's going to drive the sizing of our projects for the CIPs. On the water CIP, we have a combination of both orange projects, which are projects that are already constructed that still have capacity to serve growth, and then we have red projects, which are proposed projects that we're going to build in the future that will be meeting the needs of our future customers. On the wastewater side, we have red projects proposed, primarily lift station improvements, wastewater treatment plant improvements, and a couple of additional lines to extend service to new areas. When we think about impact fees, we're doing a calculation. So we calculate the eligible cost, and that becomes the numerator of our equation, and the denominator of our equation is our growth over the 10-year time period. And that's what we see here. Also mentioned on this slide that we're kind of using the terms living unit equivalent and service unit equivalent interchangeably in this presentation. But what this means is it's just how we're going to get everything back to the equivalent of a 3/4 inch meter or a single family home for Fair Oaks Ranch. And Chapter 395 does require us to provide a 50% credit from the maximum calculation or to do a detailed credit analysis. And in this situation, we've done the 50% credit that's required by the law. These are our service unit equivalents. Like I mentioned, this is how we're converting things back to a 3/4 inch meter. So a 3/4 inch meter is a living unit equivalent of 1, whereas a 1.5 inch meter can pass 50% the amount of flow, or 50 gallons per minute, which is twice the amount of a 3/4 inch meter. So it has a service unit equivalent of 2. So you can see that for all the different meter sizes here. And what we do with this information is we use it to convert everything back to a single family home. So right now there are 3,255 meters in your system, but when we convert those using the living unit equivalents, we have 3,471 total LUEs. So just converting those numbers using the equivalencies. And then we look at how much we're going to be growing over the 10-year window, and the difference in those numbers is 758 additional LUEs coming onto the system in the 10-year period. So that's going to be the denominator of our impact fee equation. And we did the same thing for wastewater. Again, the numbers are slightly different since we have slightly different service areas, but our denominator for wastewater is going to be 412 LUEs. Then we went through every single project on our CIP and we calculated what portion of that project is going to be utilized by the new growth that's coming to the system, and only the growth over the 10-year period. So some of these projects benefit your existing customers, and the portion of those projects that benefit customers that are here now is not eligible for impact fees. And some of them will still have capacity to serve growth beyond the 10-year time period. And so that portion of the project isn't able to be calculated. So we calculated exactly the portion of each project that's eligible for impact fees over the 10-year time period. And I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead a couple of slides because the font's so small here. But we did the same calculation on the wastewater side for each of our projects. And then this is kind of our final calculation here. Our eligible cost for water is $32 million. We have 758 new living unit equivalents coming onto the system. Maximum fee, $42,000 per single family home. But again, we're required to take the 50% credit. So City Council can decide to collect anywhere from $0 up to $21,013. And on wastewater, the maximum amount you can charge is $9,943. So this is how we went through the calculations. I went through that pretty quickly because I know you've seen it before. Does anybody have any questions on what I've presented so far? Then we have a benchmarking slide, and you can see that Fair Oaks Ranch, this is where the maximum allowable impact fee puts you. Right now, you're about here. And you can see that most of the cities that are over on the far right side of the graph with the higher numbers are the cities that have updated their impact fees most recently. As costs continue to go up, impact fees also continue to increase. This is our schedule that we've been following throughout this process. We've been meeting with your advisory committee and gotten their recommendations, which have been provided to you to adopt up to the maximum allowable. And tonight we're here for the public hearing and the first ordinance reading. Any questions?
No questions.
Thank you very
Grant, anything
much.
else to add, or? All right. We did not have anybody sign up to speak as part of the public hearing. Is there anybody here tonight that didn't get an opportunity to sign up that would like to speak related to this topic? Okay, Christine, I have the time now is 7:02, and I am closing the public hearing. And I'll open it up to council for any questions or comments that they may have.
I just have one, I just want to clarify one thing, and these fees would go into effect for all new developments from this point forward once they become an ordinance. In the past, when we had other developments with our different impact fee schedule, if there's still property in those plats, what fee do they pay for the impact fees when they decide to develop it? So like a property, say, in DME, 20 years ago, does he pay this fee, or does he pay the fee that was in place at the time?
That lot, once it builds, would pay the fee at the time that plat was recorded.
Okay.
So the old impact fee.
And so y'all maintain records of that so that if somebody, when they file for their permit, they know what they pay?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And did you, about Post Oak?
I was gonna ask
Go ahead.
for these impact fees, I know we've sort of approved or kind of gone through the motions with 3 different new developments right here at the corner, the Corley Track, Oak Bend Estates, and then Post Oak. Of those 3, would any of them be affected by this increase, or are they locked in to the old rate?
So I know the water supply agreement that was recently approved by the Corley Tract, that one locked them into the old rate. And I know there's some ongoing discussion regarding the new Post Oak development agreement. But I believe the intent there was to lock them in as well.
Okay.
Scott, do you want to add to that?
On the Post Oak specifically, that was the rates in the current development listed the rates that were applicable at the time that we approve that development agreement with the intent that they would be submitting a plat in the near term. There is an understanding that if the plat is not submitted, which they essentially have 2 weeks, that could change. So theirs could go up.
What about Oak Bend Estates?
Oak Bend, I don't recall.
So Oak Bend Estates Phase
I
1 has
believe
already been approved. Their plat has already been approved and recorded. So at least for Phase 1, they'll be paying the current impact fees, not the new ones that we're considering.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to our consideration items tonight. And the first consideration item is related to this topic, which is the consideration and possible action approving the first reading of an ordinance amending the City of Fair Oaks Ranch Code of Ordinances, Chapter 13, Utilities, Article 13.08, Water and Wastewater Impact Fees, to include amendments to land use assumptions, capital improvement plans, and water and wastewater impact fees, and providing for an effective date. And Grant, anything else we need to add for?
I have no further presentation, but I do want to mention that the ordinance attached to this agenda item reflects the maximum allowable impact fee of $21,013 per water LUE and $9,943 per wastewater LUE. These amounts were recommended by the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee, and a copy of their report is attached to this item. In addition, as Jessica mentioned earlier, an amount lower than the maximum amount may be adopted. However, understand that that shifts a larger portion of future capital improvements onto our existing ratepayers. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Any questions from council? Pretty thorough. Any questions from anyone here tonight?
So you were saying these fees,
Sir, Mr. Brown, if you could ask a question, could I ask you to introduce yourself and speak from the microphone, please?
I'm pretty loud though. So you're saying the cost per living unit is $21,000 to hook up to the water supply? And then it's an additional, how many thousand for the sewer?
It's $9,943.
So you're talking a total of over $30,000. All the more reason that Fair Oaks Ranch needs to invest in rainwater harvesting. And I saw all the water going down the Cibolo Creek right now on its way to the Gulf of Mexico. Since I was last here, I did get some new information, and part of that information was there's no sales tax on the equipment, which I think was actually brought up by the tanks law guy. And the other thing is that any resident of Texas can install rainwater harvesting equipment regardless of their homeowners association rules. They cannot disallow rainwater harvesting. They can say, we don't like the color, we don't like the placement, we don't want it next to the street, but they can't stop it. That's state law. So I just wanted to add that because that's new information that I found out just this week.
Thank you, sir.
And I can't believe it costs that much to hook up to the water system, but you're the man.
And primarily directed at developers coming in, developing new parcels within our city. With that then, could I get a motion to approve the first reading of an ordinance amending the City of Fair Oaks Ranch Code of Ordinances, Chapter 13, Utilities, Article 13.08, Water and Wastewater Impact Fees, to include amendments to land use assumptions, capital improvement plans, and water and wastewater impact fees, and providing for an effective date?
So moved.
Scott, in a second.
Second.
Ruben. Any other comments from council? Motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thanks, Grant.
Thank you, Mayor.
And then we have one other consideration item tonight, which is the consideration and the possible action approving a resolution authorizing an official notice of sale to issue certificates of obligation in the amount of $7,930,000 for water and wastewater projects and providing an effective date. And Summer, you going to lead us through this one?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Summer Fleming, Director of Finance. So this resolution does authorize posting a notice of sale to issue certificates of obligation in the amount of $7.93 million to fund water and wastewater projects. Posting the notice will officially open the competitive bidding process. As a background, during the fiscal year 24-25 budget process, the City Council approved a plan to issue certificates of obligation in multiple phases for the utility. The first issuance of $3.7 million occurred in September 2024, and the second phase, tonight's consideration, is for $7.93 million. A third issuance is planned for 2026. Now, at the June 5th council meeting, the council approved a resolution to publish a notice of intention to issue up to $9.5 million in COs for water, wastewater, and drainage projects. While that original plan included debt funding for drainage projects, a recent decision has freed up savings in the Strategic Projects Fund, and as a result, staff recommends funding the 2 drainage projects scheduled for fiscal year 25-26 with those available appropriations. This allows us to reduce the total issuance amount from $9.5 million to $7.93 million. Future drainage needs can still be addressed through operating or debt funding during the planned CO issuance next year if necessary. So tonight's resolution authorizes a notice of sale to issue certificates of obligation in the amount of $7.93 million for water and wastewater projects. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? No. Hey, Summer, as I was reading the packet, so with this and the anticipated increase on the water bill, what you showed down here is we would go from, on the water bill would go up from 23.85 to 23.89. So a 4-cent increase on the monthly bill for the water debt service. And then with this, the wastewater debt service actually goes down from 17.03 to 16.91.
Slightly. During the issuance last year and the plan of scheduling these certificates of obligation issuances over phases, we took into account the debt service payment schedules for each issuance and scheduled them out so where we could have a stable debt service fee for the residents, so that way we wouldn't have large spikes in a fee from year to year as we issued more debt. So even next year's issuance, we would likely see a more stable debt service fee for customers.
Okay. Thank you, Summer.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Any questions from anyone here tonight? Then with that, could I get a motion that the City Council adopt a resolution authorizing a notice of sale to issue certificates of obligation in the amount of $7,930,000 for water and wastewater projects?
So moved.
From Keith, and a second. From Jonathan. Any other comments from council? Discussion? Everybody good? The motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thanks, Summer.
Thank you.
And that completes the consideration items that we had tonight on the agenda. We have one workshop item, which is to talk about the city water supply and the demand projections, really from our wells and from GBRA, focusing, I think, on the next 10 years, maybe even further out.
Even further out, Mayor. Thank you. I'm Grant Watanabe, Public Works Director. With drought conditions persisting across south central Texas and Canyon Lake water levels reaching the lowest level this year since the dam was constructed back in 1964, concern has risen regarding the future of the city's water supply resources. To reassure residents that the city is not running out of water, I'll be presenting future water supply and demand projections, and GBRA is also here tonight to present some information on the Water Secure project. The Water Secure project is a potential future water source for the city and other utilities in our region, leveraging lower Guadalupe River surface water rights owned by GBRA. Following our presentations, staff will be seeking direction from City Council on whether to participate in the Water Secure project. If the city desires to participate, an MOU is required with a formal water supply agreement to follow. And depending on the direction given, staff may place the MOU or the water supply agreement on future agendas for consideration. And with that, I'll jump into the presentation. Here's a quick agenda of items that I intend to cover. A quick overview of the GBRA Water Secure Initiative. I'll try to keep it short as GBRA will be presenting more detail on that as well. An overview of the city's water system, a summary of the city's land use assumptions and historical demands and how that feeds into our future demand projections as well as our future water supply sources. So just some real quick highlights about the GBRA Water Secure project. Again, it leverages lower Guadalupe River surface water rights owned by GBRA. Once this project is initiated, they intend to start the delivery of water by 2033. There is an extensive infrastructure that is required, including a large water treatment plant, multiple pump stations, an aquifer storage and recovery facility, as well as over 250 miles of pipeline. The estimated capital cost for this project is $5.9 billion with a B. And again, GBRA is seeking MOUs with participating entities at this time. Now moving on to an overview of the city's water system. Much of the city's water infrastructure was originally built back into the 1970s, and it now includes 3 pressure zones. Those pressure zones are, we refer to them as zones A, B, and C, which represent the northern, central, and southern portions of our city. We have 5 water plants, 3 potable water wells, 10 irrigation wells, and about 85 miles of water mains. At the current time, we serve 3,262 customers. I think there was a slight change since this presentation was generated, but we now have 3,262 customers. I'd like to bring your attention to the city's land use assumptions map as well as dashboard, which are publicly available on the city's website. This shows real-time tracking and status of our development across the city. Looking at the top where you see it circled in blue, you can see that this shows the number of existing residential connections at 3,209, as well as the existing non-residential connections. And those represent either commercial, institutional, or other connections to our water system. In total, the existing residential and non-residential connections are 3,262. Below that, you'll see some numbers circled in green. The first is permitted new homes at 26. This means that permits have been issued for 26 new homes in our city, and they're currently under construction, not yet completed yet. Under that, you'll see a line for vacant with no permit. That means these are the number of vacant lots that have been platted in our city, but no permits have been pulled, so no construction has been started on that lot. And that totals 163. And then toward the bottom, again circled in green, you'll see our future number of future connections. The total number of future planned connections is 1,077, and of those, several of them are covered by an existing water supply or utility service agreement, and that number totals 458. So to get the future number of future connections, you can add 163, which represents the number of vacant lots and 1,077, which is future connections, and that you end up with 1,240 future connections based on this dashboard. You can also see at the bottom percent build out. On the water system side, we are 73% built out, and this is in terms of water customers. And at the same time, on the sewer side, you can see that we're 77% built out, and this is based on the total number of wastewater customers. Now, to develop our future projections, we had to first look at our historical demand. This chart you see in front of you takes into account the past 10 years of data going back to 2015. And I'll walk you through these columns on this chart. The first chart is the purchased water from GBRA in terms of acre feet. An acre foot is 325,851 gallons. That's the amount of acre feet purchased from GBRA. The second column represents the amount of water produced from our potable water wells, and again, this is in acre feet. The third column is a sum of those first two columns, the total potable demand in terms of what we've purchased and what we've produced. The fourth column is the total metered consumption. You'll notice that total metered consumption is lower than total potable demand, and this is because our system has leaks. We do monthly flushing, use for fire protection, and then other water loss reasons. In the fifth column, we also track number of water connections at the end of each calendar year. And toward the right, you see we calculated demand per connection. This is, again, in acre feet. Consumption per connection, gallons per connection per day, and then gallons per capita per day. And toward the bottom of this chart, we kind of looked over the range of this 10-year span. We identified what our averages were, what our high were, and what our low years were. So the number that I'd like to key in on is the 0.62 acre feet of demand per connection. This is the highest of the past 10 years, and this is what we use to project our future demands. As I mentioned before, our current number of connections is 3,262. When it comes to growth assumptions, we assumed 2% per year, which is in line with what we assumed as part of the impact fee study. So from 2025, the years 2025 to 2035, at 2% growth per year, that results in 706 new connections. And we know a lot of these connections will probably come from Oak Bend Estate development in Oak Bend Estates, Post Oak subdivision, the Corley Track, and probably some other parcels across the city. For the decade 2035 to 2045, we assumed a smaller growth rate of 1% per year. Just as we get closer to build out and less land is available for development, we're assuming a smaller growth rate. And that results in 415 new connections for that decade. And then lastly, from 2045 to build out, we used an even lower growth rate of 0.5% per year, and that resulted in 145 new connections from 2045 to build out. So using these numbers, we project at build out we'll have a total of 4,528 water connections, and we also project that we'll reach build out in the 2052 timeframe. Here, looking at our demand projection over the next, until build out, you can see using 0.62 acre feet per connection. Toward the lower left side of this chart, oh, I'm sorry. You can see our actual demands. The high demand occurred in 2022, and that's what the number at 0.62 acre feet per connection, and that's what we used for our future demand projections. Taking it out to the 2052 timeframe where we have 4,528 connections, so multiplying 4,528 by 0.62 gave us a peak demand at that time of 2,805 acre feet. Transitioning on to our supply sources, the city currently has two sources. The first is our own city-owned potable wells. Annual production over the past 10 years from these potable wells have ranged from 500 acre-feet to 950 acre-feet, and we believe the firm capacity from our wells is 750 acre-feet per year. And this means that even in the midst of drought, even with several wells down for maintenance, we believe in any given year that we can produce 750 acre-feet. In addition to that, the city also has a contract with GBRA to reserve a total of 1,850 acre-feet from Canyon Lake. The city currently takes delivery of or purchases 1,344 acre-feet, which can be increased on an annual basis up to our total reservation amount. Looking at the difference between what our current supply sources is and what our build-out demand projection requires, the difference there is about 205 acre-feet. That's our minimum future supply needed. There are several sources that we are seeking to or expect to come online. The first is additional water supply from GBRA in the 2038 timeframe. I believe the SAWS contract is expected to expire, and to renew that contract, it may be cost prohibitive for SAWS to continue, and at that point, GBRA plans to reallocate that reservation from SAWS. That reallocation would result in the city receiving about 400 acre-feet in the 2038 timeframe. A second potential source is the Water Secure project, which GBRA will be talking more about in a couple minutes. And then the last potential source is SAWS. The current city is currently pursuing an internet connect project with SAWS located along the I-10 corridor and the Leslie Pfeiffer area. The intent of this project is to use this interconnect on an emergency basis, but there is a potential that it could transition to a more wholesale service agreement with SAWS, and that would be dependent on a SAWS board approval. Now, overlaying our current and expected water supply onto the demand projection graph, you can see, again, our current supply represented by this red line at 2,600 acre-feet. In the 2038 timeframe, you see a bump of about 400 acre-feet, and then that brings us to a total of 3,000 acre-feet from that point through build-out. So in summary, our current supply of 2,600 acre-feet and the anticipated supply from GBRA of 400 acre-feet does meet the minimum build-out requirement of 2,805 acre-feet. We do have high confidence in receiving the 400 acre-feet allocation from GBRA in the 2038 timeframe. But with that said, obtaining additional supply may be costly, but does provide the city with future flexibility to consider some items. One item may be the potential expansion of the city's water service area beyond what's identified in the water and wastewater master plan to help manage surrounding growth. And there's one area that comes to mind. I'll mention the Knoll Track, where half of that property is within the city's ETJ, and the other half of that property is in the San Antonio ETJ. And there's been past discussions with potential developers for that property, and if the city were willing to serve the portion that's in the San Antonio ETJ, that developer might be willing to develop in accordance with what we currently zone at 5-acre lots or 1-acre lots instead of something more dense.
What track?
The Knoll Track
Where's that?
is to the northeast portion of our city.
Pretty close to Ammon and Ralph Fair Road on the east side, north of me.
A second potential benefit of attaining future water supply might be to support potential zoning changes that are deemed beneficial to the city. And the one specific area that comes to mind is along Ralph Fair Road. As TxDOT plans to expand Ralph Fair roads to 4 or 5 lanes in the next few decades, there may be some opportunities to rezone areas along Ralph Fair Road to commercial. That might be a little bit more intensive, but that might be more appropriate for that thoroughfare. And then lastly, there's always the potential for legislative changes related to development. The state is pro-growth, and then over the next few decades, the city's ability to regulate growth and density may change. So with that, I do want to introduce Brian Perkins. He's with GBRA. He serves as their Deputy Executive Manager of Engineering, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about the water secure projects. All right, bring up your position.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you this evening, talk about the project we've been working on. So again, I'm Brian Perkins. I'm representing GBRA tonight. And I've been spearheading, leading our efforts on this program. So really this started probably a little over 2 years ago when we started seeing draft population projections from the Water Development Board as part of the regional planning process. Fair Oaks Ranch, along with the entire Guadalupe River Basin, I'll take that. I'll say most of the Guadalupe River Basin and San Antonio River Basin are within Region L. And so we, summer of 2023, we looked at those population projections and just went ahead and grabbed some existing and projection data that we had available to us. And that's what's represented in this graphic here. The black line, the solid line there, is actual population for GBRA's upper 5 counties. We're a 10-county district. Obviously, Kendall, Comal, Caldwell, Guadalupe, and Hayes County being our kind of upper 5 counties, primarily where a lot of the growth is, along the I-35 corridor, I-10 corridors, SH-130 corridor. And those dashed lines towards the bottom there are all the previous regional water plans. So that dates back to the first one back in 2001, all the way through the 2021 plan. The green dashed line that's exponentially growing faster and faster there is what is in the 2026 initially prepared plan today. So that plan is actually out, available to be in draft form to be commented on. There was a process the Water Development Board does with the planning groups and kind of puts out draft projections, and then they finalize those in about December of last year. Well, we plotted this up and we said, wow, there's some interesting information you can gather from here. One, if you look at all the previous plans and versus the black line there, these 5 counties have outpaced those projections in nearly every single year. And some quite a bit, and others, just a little bit, but that I assure you, looking at the data, that black line is above all those dashed lines. If you believe that to continue the truth, and you believe this green line here, then we've got a lot of growth to happen. If you start looking at it from a water supply standpoint, what this tells us is there's projects that were in the plan that probably need to be advanced and brought forward quicker by the 2040 decade. And there's going to be a lot more water needed by the time you get to 2070 and 2080. In fact, if you look at this, we basically need, within this region, 4 new canyon reservoirs. The water supply associated with 4 new canyon reservoirs by 2080. And so we took this information, we started talking with our existing customers and other entities we had relationships with, and we kind of wanted to ground truth this. So we plotted this up, we went out and we talked and met with your staff and others in the area as well, and said, is this the kind of growth you're seeing? And some of them very much so, yes. Others, no, we're growing pretty steady at 2-3% a year. We don't know if they're going to grow that much faster. And there were others where there's not a lot of growth, but they are experiencing some situations with their existing supplies, primarily on the groundwater side. With groundwater conservation districts ratcheting them down on what they can take during drought, they start worrying about their existing supplies and start thinking about what their future is. And so the question we kind of posed as a follow-up to that conversation was, well, if GBRA could put together a regional project, would you be interested in at least hearing some information? Share some information with us. We'll share some information with you. We'll see what we can do with some existing water rights that we have. And so we started that process, and I'm going to jump to the next slide here. Just kind of a timeline there. So that late summer 2023 is kind of when we started this process. We had those informal discussions with folks, and there was enough feedback that said, yes, we'd be interested in a regional project. What can GBRA do to help alleviate some of these growing pains? And so we went to our board, got authorization to use some reserve funds and hire a firm to do a feasibility study. We selected Black & Veatch engineering firm to do that study in, excuse me, in December of 2023. And the very first thing we did was we went and we took Black and Veatch and we sat down with every single one of the entities we talked to. There were about 25 different entities that had expressed some sort of interest. So we came and met, sat down face to face, and we asked four basic questions. If you're interested in water from GBRA, how much water would you be interested in? When do you need it? Where do you want it? And would you prefer raw or treated water? And so we took all that information from those 25 entities, including Fair Oaks Ranch, pulled that together, and Black and Veatch did some work and came up with some concepts. And we worked through those concepts, and we probably, you know, when you consider all the little alterations here and there and look at different things, we probably looked at about 20 or so different concepts. And then in summer of 2024, last year, we came back to those entities again, and we sat down and presented 3 of those concepts and had some very preliminary costs at the time. That gave us an opportunity to, again, solicit some feedback. You know, based on the information you guys said, plus these other entities, these are kind of 3 different concepts that we could potentially develop with some, again, existing water rights that we've had, some dating back to the 60s, some that we've just got granted in 2020. And here's some preliminary costs. And we kind of said, go back and talk to your staff, talk to your governing bodies, discuss this internally, talk to your engineers, and see if this is something you're still interested in. We followed up in the fall of last year again, and basically kind of asked those same questions. You know, are you still interested? If so, are you still thinking the same amount of water? There was a preference to go towards the treated water side of things. So, you know, is treated water preferable for you? That, you know, that kind of thing. When do you think you need it? Where would you want it? Kind of thing. So just kind of verifying that again. So with that, we took that information, again, pulled it back together. Black and Veatch went and kind of refined that one concept that made the most sense for the most number of utilities. And we spent a lot of time looking through, conceptualizing, you know, the placement of pump stations and treatment plants, where we would do off-channel reservoir, where we do aquifer storage and recovery, where those pipelines would be, and did a very detailed cost estimate. In fact, the Black and Veatch team hired 2 contractors that are known to do some larger infrastructure projects to develop full-scale cost estimates as if they were bidding the job. So that they would have their engineer estimate plus 2 contractor estimates independently to kind of ground truth all those costs. Because we knew this was going to be an expensive project. We knew this was a lot of infrastructure. We wanted to make sure we kind of got good information to everyone. At the same time, obviously, we've been in drought now for nearly 4 years. And so we really wanted to make sure that what we said we were capable of doing in terms of water supply was something we could do. And so while Black and Veatch was doing the infrastructure, sizing, routing, costing side of things, we also had another firm called HDR that we've worked with over the years, helping us on the water supply side, both in terms of what's available from the river under our water rights, but also how we can use those in the off-channel reservoir and that ASR system. And so we had several workshops internally, but also brought in the consultants and worked through how, you know, kind of the risk associated with this program. What's, you know, questions like, what if the drought we're in now is worse than drought of record? What if in 50 years there's a new drought of record? What happens if, you know, there's some sort of issue with, you know, flows in the river at various locations? What if the aquifer storage and recovery assumptions we made in terms of how much we can inject and how much we can pull back out? What if we're just wrong? What if we're, you know, you're telling me we can inject at 500 gallons a minute. What if it's only 300 gallons a minute? And so it was with that, along with the costing process, we took a little extra time and kind of nailed down to the size of the project we were at. And ultimately, we landed on about a 90 million gallon day project, which is about 100,000 acre feet of water. So once we settled into that late March, we set up meetings again and kind of presented those final results to staff level across those 25 different utilities. And this is truly a region-wide project. We have been talking to the city of Victoria, all the way up to Mustang Ridge and Buda area, all the way out here to Bernie and Fair Oaks. So it's and everything in between. Given the timelines that we're trying to do to try to meet some of the needs, we decided we would do a draft MOU and get those out to those entities in May. And those MOUs are non-binding. But what they are is they're an opportunity for us and staff to kind of elevate that to the governing bodies, whether it's city council or board, and really have at least a somewhat formal commitment that we're still interested in this project at a certain quantity of water. Again, it's non-binding, can be pulled out at any time. The binding part comes is that MOU will kind of set the basis of what the water supply agreements would be. And once the water supply agreements are executed, that would be the binding part. But anytime between now and that point, if, things can change. You want more water, that's great. You want less, that's fine. You don't want to participate, that's fine as well. So that's kind of where we're at today. I want to give some more background on the project itself. Did it not click forward? Sorry, there you go. So as Grant mentioned, there's a lot of infrastructure here. We do have 2 sets of water rights. We have some very senior water rights. The water rights themselves actually date back to the 40s and 50s. We purchased them in the 60s, down below the confluence of the San Antonio and Guadalupe River in the lower basin. We utilize some of those water rights right now for some existing customers, both industrial, agricultural, and municipal in the lower basin, but there's a large chunk of those water rights we're not utilizing. Also in the mid-basin, we have a new permit that we got granted to us in 2020 that allows us to pull water out near the city of Gonzales. I should mention that this was 2 separate projects in the 2021 plan. So if you go back to the 2021 regional plan, you'll find 2 different projects. And really because of that growth curve and because of this desire to potentially participate in a regional project, we looked at putting that together. And what that means is lower basin diversion into an off-channel reservoir. If you're familiar with the Arbuckle Reservoir that LCRA built, it's similar to that, possibly a little larger. A pipeline connecting that to the mid-basin and that mid-basin diversion near Gonzales, going to a centralized treatment facility and ASR well field. And so in all, that could be as much as 3,000 to 5,000 acres to have a 150 million gallon a day water treatment plant, anywhere from 20 to 30 different ASR wells, and enough land to make sure that when you put the water in the ground, someone's not pulling it out right next to you. So kind of control the bubble, we call it. So, and then treated water transmission out to various customers. As I mentioned, Victoria is one of the entities in the lower basin. They would actually participate from a raw water standpoint because the treatment plant would be upstream. They have some plans to expand their existing water treatment plant. There's also some potential for new industry in the lower basin to participate as well. So it's not just a municipal project. It could be a municipal and industrial project put together. So project elements, I mentioned this already, the lower basin infrastructure, we talked about the off-channel reservoir and the raw water transmission, that water treatment plant and the treated water transmission, and then the aquifer storage and recovery. As part of that risk analysis I talked about, looking at how do we develop this 90 million gallons a day, a couple things became very clear to us. Every bit of this infrastructure we feel we can build if we can launch the program in 2026, we feel like we can build it by about 2033, 2034. And that off-channel reservoir fills quickly. 5 to 12 months, it's filled. The aquifer storage and recovery, even though everything's built by that time frame, it's going to take 5 to 8 years to fill that up. And so part of the reason for that is you're physically injecting, pushing water in the ground, but also a lot of that supply for that is dependent on that newer water right, that junior water right. And so I don't know, I can't tell you now in 2035 if we're going to be in drought or flood or average flows. And so it really depends on the hydrology of how quickly we can fill that aquifer storage and recovery up. So what that means is a 90 million gallon a day project, 60 million gallons a day really contingent on filling that off-channel reservoir up, and the other 30 contingent on filling up the aquifer storage and recovery. That timeline is going to be a little longer, potentially up to 2040. And so, and I'm going to use Fair Oaks Ranch, the 300 acre feet as an example here. What that would mean from a contractual standpoint is if you guys chose to enter the MOU and stuck with that 300 acre feet and then decided to do the water supply agreement and execute that late this year, early next year, we would go forth and build this, and for you and all the other customers, that of that 300 acre feet that you'd reserve, 200 would be available as soon as that off-channel reservoir is full, and the other 100 would come available once that ASR is full, potentially 5 to 8 years later. And so it's really a the water delivery timing standpoint. And I'll talk about costs here in a minute, but really, that comes into play a lot on the O&M side of things and how you actually would have to pay for O&M and when you start taking that water and whatnot. So let's see. Before I jump into costs, I want to give some just kind of quick background here on some of the previous GBRA projects that we've done. One I think that you're very familiar with, the Western Canyon project. Oh, sorry. No, I just cleared that slide out. Sorry. Never mind. I did take that slide out. Sorry. So we're just going to jump straight to cost. So as Graham mentioned, this is a $5.9 billion project. It's a lot of infrastructure, a lot of pipeline, off-channel reservoir, big water treatment plant, aquifer storage and recovery. I don't know if I mentioned, but 250 miles of pipeline. The slide I took out kind of put some context in that, over the years, you can see cost has gone up. Of course, there's escalation, inflation that's occurred, but also where you get the water is getting further and further away, and it becomes a story about pipeline. Pipeline is expensive, and the further you go away, the more you have to do, and you can try to right-size that pipeline and value engineering it, but at the end of the day, you're still digging trenches, you're still laying pipe. Doesn't matter if it's 6-inch or 60-inch. You're having to cross roads and railroads and creeks and do tunneling and all that stuff, and the longer it gets, the more of those you have to contend with. So, pipeline, being a 250 miles worth of pipeline in this project, there's going to be a lot of costs, and that contributes a lot to that $5.9 billion. What that works out to in terms of this is a pure capital cost per acre foot, about $63,000 per acre foot. One way to think about that, if you wanted to, is let's pretend you wanted to pay for this all with new development. You could potentially put an impact fee on, and I'm going to use kind of some of the numbers that Grant's had there earlier, that you were, let's say you were doing 0.5 acre feet per connection, so you get 2 connections per acre foot. It could work out that, $32,000 acre feet per, or $32,000 per connection could offset this cost. But then, of course, you have all your internal infrastructure as well, so it'd be slightly higher. But that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is from a finance standpoint, of course. There are mechanisms, especially through the state with SWIFT funding. I don't know if you guys have participated with SWIFT funding at all before, but that's something that's at our disposal. I have 2 time periods here, 30-year debt service period and 40-year debt service period. Until this past legislature, SWIFT was limited to 30 years. It was through some of the associations that GBRA works with and GBRA leadership that we actually helped craft some language that allowed for SWIFT to be drawn out to 40 years. And I'm happy to say that passed both the House and Senate, and it also got signed by the governor. And so come September 1st, going forward, the Water Development Board will be allowed to do SWIFT funding for as long as 40 years under certain conditions. The good news about this is that this is going to be an 8 to 10 year project to just get water to people. If without this, you're looking at a 30-year loan period, you're paying interest, and whether you amortize some of that interest or not, or rolling it not, you're paying for 10 years worth of interest and debt before you ever get a drop of water. By putting it out to 40 years, yes, you're still borrowing the same amount. Yes, you're going to pay more interest in the long run, but you're able to push some of that cost further out down there, and you can not necessarily have to pay all up front for water you're not going to see for 8 to 10 years. And so the blue and green here are kind of 2 different debt structure scenarios we work with our financial advisor and bond counsel to look at in terms of if we were to amortize the debt early on. And I think the blue is that there would be no payments until 2035. So you wouldn't pay any debt service back until that water was delivered, or at least the initial delivery amount was delivered. The green would be a similar scenario, but you start paying a little bit of debt in 28 and 29, and it slowly ramps up over time until you get to 2035. And so there's some creative ways we can look at financing this to try to lessen the burden on your existing ratepayers, and also allow you to kind of grow your rates and impact fees over time and look at how, internally, how you guys could potentially take advantage of this 40-year period, take advantage of some of the debt, those debt scenarios to help pay for this project. Because I will admit, it's an expensive project. I empathize with all of you. But again, I think you get back to where the source water is and how far away it is and what has to be done to get it to all the various locations. So next steps, again, I kind of talked about the MOUs at this point. We're trying to get those MOUs executed in July, by the end of July. I understand that that probably won't happen here. That's not a problem. There's a handful of utilities that are looking to do it in August, NBU being one of them. And then we hope to get a draft water supply agreement in front of those who execute the MOUs by the end of August. In fact, I think there's a latest draft that's in my inbox right now for me to look over. We're trying to put the bows on it at the last little bits. And work through those negotiations, contract terms and whatnot with those different utilities between August and early part of next year. That allows us to go out and seek funding with the SWIFT fund in February 2026. There's an early application period, and then the full application comes in May. So we would start that process based on the draft water supply agreements and those executed MOUs. We've also, and then as of yesterday, our board authorized us to go ahead and procure a program manager. Because as you can imagine, a project this size is going to require a lot of manpower, more manpower than GBRA has. So we would hire a program manager to help manage the final planning, the design, and execution of this program. So we're working on a draft RFQ right now to put that on the street here in the next couple weeks to try to get a program manager by October and start some of this early work, even in advance of funding being secured. Once that happens, as early as June next year, we could be kicking off some design projects. And with that, we could potentially start construction in 2028 and have water delivered in 2033, 2034 timeline. I know that's a lot of information. I'm sure you guys have questions. Yeah, I'll leave it there. So I'll stop now.
Questions?
How much time do we have tonight? 'Cause I got a lot of questions. I do have a couple I need to ask Grant, and you as well. We currently have a reservation of certain amount of acre feet of water. If the drought continued for several more years and we hadn't had this additional water come into the reservoir, is there ever an issue with GBRA not meeting its contract commitments? Are we ever exposed there for y'all not being able to deliver what you've contracted for?
I can't predict the future. I don't know how bad the drought would get. What I can say is that the drought we've been experiencing over the last 4 years had been more significant than the previous drought of record in the 50s over that short 4 to 5 year period. The difference being the drought of record lasted nearly 10 years. We did not fill up Canyon with these most recent rain events. We did recover about 75,000 acre feet there, and that certainly prolongs things as well. We have a drought contingency plan, as I'm sure that as you do too, to try to make sure that we are prepared for a drought worse than the drought record. But even given the fact that the last 4 years were more severe than the worst 4 years during the drought of record, we still had 46% of water in the reservoir. And so we're still doing good. We're still managing the water there. We still have plenty of capacity to meet demands for another 4, 5, 6 years of a drought.
So,
And this most recent rain certainly helps as well.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and of course, now, I mean, with the population we have now versus what was in the 50s, night and day comparison of, demands on that lake.
Yeah, when I say what I've just said, that is based on full allocation of using all the water, regardless of population, because as you know, the reservoir wasn't there in the 50s.
Right, it was in 64.
So we're using a reservoir built in the 60s and doing modeling of what would have happened had it been there in the 50s, and we're modeling what's the maximum amount of water you can take out of that during that period. And so it is a hypothetical, but it is based in reality in terms of the hydrology, because that Spring Branch gauge has been there since 1934. And so we have a good over 90 years worth of data from that gauge. We have a good sense of what happens with the variability of flows there.
So what's the likelihood of us getting the 400 acre-foot allocation that, Grant, you mentioned, that's going to come offline from SAWS in 2038? So how do you determine who gets it?
That is a great question. I'll give you some context real quick. So yes, that contract expires in December 31st, 2027. The provisions in that contract, and I'll apologize because I wasn't around when we wrote it, but is that GBRA notifies SAWS on January 1st, 2037 about that expiration, and they have until September 30th of 2037 to formally make a decision. I hope we have some indication from them prior to that, that they are going to either want to continue or to pull out. I hope we don't have to decide in a 6-month period. I think, as Grant mentioned earlier, I think the current thinking as of today in 2025 is that SAWS probably will not want to continue because the provision is that they can continue getting water, but they have to basically pay for the replacement water costs, and that may be cost prohibitive. So given that, and you know, Fair Oaks Ranch is not the only city that's been asking this question. We are currently working in-house to determine how we would split that water up amongst the other participants of Western Canyon. I think it is our intent to have that out in fall of this year, you know, potentially before December, of how that would actually work. So, I don't know the exact value if it is 400 acre feet or 300 acre feet or whatever it is, but we'll certainly get that out. And you along with Cordillera and Bernie and Texas Water Company are all interested in as much as you could get from that. So I think we're going to look at it the fairest way possible. And I think that's probably going to be based on contract values, but I'm not the person to make that decision. Ultimately, it's our general manager. So, but we're certainly working up recommendations for him right now. So I think, I hope I answered your question.
No, that's helpful. And I guess you have, that allocation's available without this new project, right? That's currently available, so.
Yeah, that is Western Canyon water based on Canyon raw water contracts and everything else that is completely disconnected from this water secure project. This water secure project is a whole separate set of surface water rights, not connected to Canyon at all.
And so in that decision, SAWS has to give up the rights to that acre feet of water that they have right now. That'd be the first decision.
The first decision is that they just tell us whether they want the contract to expire or they want to continue. Yeah.
And you get an answer on that hopefully within the next year.
No, they could tell us with anything right now, but really they have until, June 30th of 2037 to tell us officially.
Okay. And then after that, then there has to be a division of that water between competing agencies that want that water.
Yeah, I think what would happen here by the end of the year is that we'll set aside that the decision isn't going to be made until 2037. Let's assume that they decide not to continue.
Mm-hmm.
How we would go about, we'll go ahead and set that information
within the next year.
Yeah, if
Okay.
SAWS does this, then we think that Fair Oaks Ranch would get this amount of water. So, Bernie would get this amount of water, et cetera. And then obviously the other side of that is if SAWS doesn't do that and they decide to stay in, then the answer would be 0.
Okay.
So, yeah. Does that make sense? Okay.
So do you have other water that you could allocate to, or is everything spoken for right now, except for that 400 acre feet?
So
Like if we wanted some more, we wanted to reserve more.
everything on the canyon is fully allocated.
It's
right
fully
now.
allocated, so there's no more allocation unless somebody drops an allocation or this new project comes online.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you the only individual GBRA that has rights to draw water out of Canyon Lake?
Yeah. That was there's some interesting reads out there, but during the project development of Canyon in the late 50s and early 60s, there was a lawsuit that came about, and ultimately GBRA prevailed and was granted the sole ability to own water rights in Canyon. Yeah.
I just ask it so you're not managing what you have and somebody else is over here.
No. I mean, the way the reservoir works, anything below 909 is a water supply pool, and GBRA has the full water rights for that through TCEQ. Above 909 is flood pool, and the Corps of Engineers manages that. So, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
I've got more, but I want to let somebody else speak. Anybody
Just
else?
kind of tagging on.
Let Jonathan go. I'll come back.
Questions for Grant. Grant, you mentioned that tract that we could theoretically develop. It's about 240 acres.
Roughly, that's correct.
Let's say that we put 210 houses on it and we use your numbers of 0.54 to 0.62. That would leave us like 105 to 130 or 125. That would fit in what we have, assuming we can draw that from our contracts. How close can we get and still be comfortable to, we can't go over, but how close do we historically stay and do we feel comfortable staying
So.
to our
based-
contract limit?
Well, I think we're talking about the difference between what our
Talking
demand
about
projection and.
if we were going to extend our CCN outside the city limits, how much LUEs could we pick up and still stay within the amounts that you just showed us? Is that,
Yeah, well, I understand how, that we can pick them up and we can stay inside of the amounts, but how close to the edge are we comfortable getting?
Our comfort level?
Yeah,
So right now we have, I'm just thinking the difference between what our peak demand projection is and our future supply projection as well. That was about 195 acre feet because our peak demand was 2,805 and then our future supply was 3,000. So that difference was 195 acre feet. If
so if
a
you're
single
doing
family
17
home is projected to take 0.62 acre feet, that's a few hundred homes you could probably support with that buffer.
That was pretty impressive. You did that just standing up there with all the information.
And can say we only have like 10 acre feet left, what do we do then? Are we like in emergency mode where we're trying to figure out, hey, we're gonna need some more water because we need a bigger buffer because 10 is not enough, or is 10 plenty?
I think the bigger buffer we have, the more level of comfort we would have going into the future. The smaller that buffer is, then the smaller level of comfort.
What I was saying, though, is numbers Grant just said, I wasn't using my calculator, but that gives us under the ultra-conservative projections that Grant went through. So if at our highest demand year to date, projected out 30 years with growth, we would still, under those conditions, have the not quite 200 acre feet, which is, I think it was like a 7 or 8% cushion using, again, very conservatively high projections. So that's the buffer that we're talking about, all else equal, of course.
So once we level out that curve, right, and we've built everywhere that we're gonna build and we don't think that we're going to need any more water, how many acre feet do you expect to have on reserve or feel comfortable having on reserve? I think maybe it might be a more accurate question.
So I think the buffer that we're projecting at 195 acre feet is comfortable.
And does that leave us room to draw all that down to go see if we can, if anybody wants water out, past what we're serving right now, and just draw that all the way down to zero?
No, I would always recommend maintaining some type of buffer.
What is
It may
that
not
buffer?
be 195, it could be something lower. But
That's my question. Is
I
what's
wouldn't go
that
down to
number?
0. no.
Yeah. Okay, so 10, 20, 30?
I guess we're talking 30 years, okay? So, there's so many, in my mind, there's so many things that could happen in 30 years. One is we never know what the state legislature is gonna do to us. The next thing you know, we're building condos, instead of housing, we're tripling our LUEs, or whatever else may come on, I think that, not that it's not an unfair question, but I think that there's so many moving parts, and correct me if I'm wrong, because we have wells that we're drawn from as well, that contribute a significant amount of water to the city supply. I just, trying to, in my mind, trying to think about new sources of water is always something that would be, in order to keep our comfort level, might be something that we need to, seriously consider. I know that we have people that come in. We talked about the Knoll Track a couple of years ago and what might happen out there. Part of that's in our CCN, part of it's not. But as people are looking at Fair Oaks as a city, we're gonna be faced with these questions, and they're all gonna want water in order to build out here. Just kind of think, I'm not trying to deflect from the question, but I think that 30 years that's a big crystal ball to try and see what's going to happen. Just on the sheer, obviously GBRA doesn't know that it's a good timeline, but who knows how long it's going to take to go ahead and get water up, and we have no way of counting on what's going to happen with SAWS. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. Even if we have a plan in place that says that they're going to let go of that water, 400 acre feet. There's nothing to say that that's what they're going to decide to do in a moment of panic as everybody's trying to find new sources of water. As a council, I think we all need to kind of look and see what it's a moving target, so to speak.
Right. So Grant, you kind of laid out our requirements, and I think you use risk-averse methods to determine most water used, less water available, to determine our max use for that time period. So based on what you've laid out, at full build-out of the city, we'd still have approximately 200 acre feet of water available.
Right, assuming that we get the 400 acre feet once SAWS gets.
Right, so the question that I have is, why would I want to participate in this when I believe we've done our due diligence to program the water requirements that we need for build-out of the city, and anything that we were doing with GBRA now would be something that we're not focused on at this current time, which are kind of what Jonathan was bringing up, focusing on future build-out or extending our CCN. But I would believe right now we have no desire to do that, unless somebody sees something different.
When is the SAWS interconnect project scheduled to be complete?
It's currently in design. We're looking to go into construction next fiscal, or we're budgeting for construction next fiscal year.
And when would it be done, roughly? Or how long would it take?
To be safe, maybe a year from now.
Would have a potential source of emergency water from SAWS.
Correct.
And is it possible that if we needed, whether it's 205 acre feet or if they keep the 400, whatever we need, are they a potential source where we already have that connection and infrastructure in place?
Then that would become a potential source. We would have to have that discussion with SAWS on whether we can take water routinely instead of just on an emergency basis, but we would have to have that discussion. And
Okay.
Have we had any discussions? I'm sorry.
Yeah, hold on. Can I go back to my question? I had a question. Why would we want to participate in this? Maybe from GBRA, if you could help us out. Why would I want to participate in this when I believe we have projected out our water needs well into the future that could support build out of the city?
I think it just comes down to the level of comfort of what that buffer is right now. It was calculated to, was it 7%, sir? But
Ish.
7. If
So
if some folks think a 10% buffer is more appropriate, then that might be a reason to participate.
I had the same question, Mayor, because when I did your calculations of your capital cost, if I understood that was $63,000 per acre foot, times 300 acre feet. That's quite an investment on the city. And then on top of that, I'm assuming we would need to pay for water, because that's just your infrastructure. It doesn't actually pay for the delivery. So I'm like the mayor, that was one of my questions, so thanks for saving me, Mayor. It's not making sense to me either at that cost. It's a big ticket.
I
Gotta
mean,
help us.
You're right, it is a big cost. You would be financing 300 times that roughly
It's
$63,000.
$18 million.
Yeah, and so
18.9 actually.
finance that over 40 years, and you could end up paying
40
$30
million,
million.
45 million. I
There you
already
go.
did the numbers.
There you go. I agree. I think Fair Oaks Ranch is in a very unique position. You guys have planned well. You know, you've had extensive studies about what your build-out looks like, what your water supplies are. You've got a, breadth of wells you can draw on. You have they had the forethought back in 2004, 2002 to sign on for the Western Canyon project. And I'm sure that there are other entities in the area who wish they would have participated at a larger scale back then in that project. So, I mean, I think you guys are in a unique position. That's a question that, ultimately y'all need to discuss. And I'm here to present some information and answer
Sure.
your questions. But, you've got some great staff here that are considering that as well. I'm sure your finance has been engaged as well, looking at how that would impact potential rates and whatnot down the line. But these are all questions that you all need to answer.
So what would you envision at any time, so the amount of acre feet that we're requesting now or paying for right now, is there any point in the future that outside of drought contingency that we would not be able to get that water?
The 1850 from Western Canyon?
Right.
No, I don't think so. Outside of drought, no.
And even if, the 400 were to come online and we were to add that to it.
Same. It's all the same source of water, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand with drought contingency, I mean, we cut 15% or 25%, but that affects the whole community, not
Okay.
just Fair Oaks Ranch, I mean, the whole San Antonio
All of
area.
Central Texas,
Right.
yeah. Exactly.
Okay,
So can I ask another question?
of course.
Okay. So if the municipalities that do not participate in your $5.9 billion infrastructure program, are they not able to buy water? Or will they be able to buy water?
Well,
Is it
so-
only the people that help build it have access to the water?
So it's similar to the Western Canyon project we did with y'all.
Okay.
You participated from the very beginning, you have the right to that water. Certainly things could change where if for some reason you didn't participate, maybe there would be someone who participated too much and would want to sell water at some point in the future, but, GBRA would entertain a discussion about that, but I think, yeah, I mean, I know it's a lot of decisions to make for what might not happen for 10 years, 8-10 years, and I understand that. I will remind you, the MOU is non-binding, and you could have another 6 months to think about this if you wanted to. But again, I completely understand the situation you're in. I fully understand how expensive this water is. I will say, we're already going to the coast for this water, and this is going to meet 1/4 of that 2018 demand, and that might not be a situation for Fair Oaks Ranch, but it's for others in the area. I don't know what our next water supply is at this point. We're doing due diligence now to try to figure out what happens after this project. And, I hope to be retired by then. So, I like to say this is my swan song project, so, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's, is it seawater desalination? Is it water from Arkansas, water from Louisiana? I don't know. We have discussions with our neighbors in BRA and LCRA about what to do next. And we're all trying to think of the next best thing, so, yeah.
Yeah. Grant, I was just looking at your numbers and historical demand. I mean, right now, we're about 70% dependent on purchased water versus our wells. So that's going to be higher, I mean, at some point. I mean, everything is going to be coming from GBRA at some point.
Correct.
Though, I mean, 90% of it will be based on the projections, because our wells can only produce this much, right? And we have no ability to get new wells, correct?
Correct. Not at this time, correct.
Is there a risk that the amount we do get from the existing wells will start to decrease just based on source? Like running dry?
So the firm capacity that we believe we can produce from our wells is the amount that we think we can produce even during the midst of a drought. There are reductions in the amount we can produce from wells, but I think we predicted 750 acre feet.
And I have a question about so if I understood this correctly, let's say 100, don't be offended by my numbers because I'm just making it up. 100 entities sign up with MOUs, and then those that are in that group, you would sort of forecast out the cost per entity, correct?
Right.
And then if they're not binding, so then when it's time to sign agreements, let's say 25% drop off, then the 75 remaining, now their costs have gone up? Theoretically?
Potentially. So I've already provided example debt schedule based on the best information we have now to the city for the 300 acre feet. So there's some examples of what your year-to-year cost would be under those kind of 4 different scenarios. I don't think I'm gonna have new numbers before water supply agreements are signed. I think that's the best information I have now.
Yeah.
Because we need to go do the real work in terms of, drill wells and build infrastructure and whatnot. We also have to go get the financing. We're assuming a certain financing rate as of, earlier this year. I don't know what the financing rate's gonna be when we go in 2020, early 2026 to do that. So, that said, what's your question? Oh, sorry, I'm trying to remember the rest of your question.
So if people plan for
Oh.
the financing based on a group of entities that are gonna
Yes.
participate, but then they drop off
Yeah.
when it's time to sign the agreement, then everyone else's capital cost has gone up,
So, and this,
or
I think,
contribution.
this is why we're making an effort to make sure we're having these discussions and going to city council meetings and board meetings, because I think if you were to sign the MOU, and I asked this of all of the utilities, give us a realistic number. And, certainly things can change, and if you decided you wanted less or wanted to pull out, that's understandable. The cost would change. The project we is smaller, so technically the cost would come down, but the divider of the number of customers would go down too. So I don't know how on the unit cost that would work out. I think overall the cost probably comes down a little bit, but, so, we may be, if it's 100,000 acre feet that we get under the MOUs, but only 80,000 end up signing water supply agreements, we may build a 84-inch pipeline instead of a 96-inch pipeline. And so that cost is cheaper, I can't tell you to which degree. And we might build a, 120 MGD water treatment plant instead of 150 MGD water treatment plant. So that all has to be right sized. And that's why I'm asking, entities like yourself, it's like, if you want to participate, look, this is what the MOU is for. Give us a realistic number so we can kind of tweak anything before we go. And so as much as we can once we do the water supply agreements, yeah.
Thanks.
And that program manager, getting them on board to help with this, between now and April of next year, try to help answer some of those questions. If not in a precise calculated number, at least in a round number, so, yeah. It's a movie, much like we talked about, there's a lot of moving
Yeah.
targets going on, so.
How many acre feet y'all expecting to be able to produce when this project's online?
So online, both those
Yeah.
storage reservoirs, 100,000 acre feet.
100,000.
Canyon's at 90,000, so it's right, it's just like a brand new canyon. But it's, the storage, instead of being one big reservoir, it's a 100,000 acre foot off-channel reservoir and another, 200,000 acre feet storage somewhere else in off-channel, aquifer storage and recovery. So it's really like a new canyon.
So it's basically doubling your Canyon Lake full
Yeah.
pool capacity with this project
Very much so, yes.
at the $6 billion roughly, or 5.9 billion,
That's
to
correct.
put it online.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you done any, this is way early, but relative to the water we pay for coming out of Canyon, whatever the rate is we pay today, when this is online, what's the rate of that water gonna be, the new water? Is it gonna be 6 times the unit cost? Or do you have any idea?
So I don't know the exact rate we charge you right now. I think that if you look at and again, it depends how you finance the infrastructure and whatnot, but I think if you look at that, it could be somewhere around $15 per 1,000 gallons for this amount of water. And certainly Canyon's a lot less than that. Whether it's, that's 3 times more or 4 times more, I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's probably in that ballpark, I would say.
$15 per 1,000?
$15 per
Just
1,000.
as a
Yeah.
sticky thumb up
I mean,
in
when
the
you
air.
consider the the capital debt service portion, the water rate itself, and then the O&M costs, you may be somewhere, you know, that all-in bill. Of course, once debt service is done and drops off, that goes away and you're only paying for the O&M and whatnot, so.
Okay.
But yeah, rough $15 a 1,000 gallons.
Is that it?
Now, I'm done.
Anybody else? Anybody else here tonight have any questions? Mr. Brown? Sorry. People at home want to hear your question too.
Okay. Yeah, I was Steve Brown, Fair Oaks resident. I know I got confused here. You said how many acre feet per household per year? Because I heard something like 1 acre foot only serves 2 households. Did I mishear?
No, on average use, I think, was calculated at 0.53 acre feet per connection or per household. But for projection purposes and to be conservative, we use 0.62 acre feet per household.
That number seems to me to be out of line, because I know what I use in my household. It's about 55,000 gallons per year. I have a swimming pool. I don't water my lawn very often, but that's about 1/6 of an acre foot. Personally, in my household. And now, I don't know what the average household, but it's that number you're using, 0.62, seems out of line. Can you explain, please?
That's the customer demand. It's what the system has been pulling for the last number of years. So overall, the average household uses in the vicinity, in the peak months, it's somewhere, what, 14,000 gallons, somewhere in there?
Based off of 2023 data, it was, during peak summer months, it was around 18,000 gallons. Winter months offset that, and it was closer to the 8,000 to 9,000 gallons per month.
But to determine this, Grant, I mean, you just took the total water use over the year, divided it by the number of connections that we had.
Yes, sir. That's all we did.
And that's,
And it was a combination of residential and commercial and all of our different user base.
all right,
Correct.
so we know the total water use that we've had for the year. They just divided that by the number of water connections that we had. And so you may be a great saver of water, and at 55,000 gallons a year, you probably are. And, you know, we have others that may use more than that.
I like on the chart on page 153, I mean, Grant shows a high, which is the 0.62, which is the most conservative. And then we have an average of a 0.53 and then a low of 0.46. So for planning purposes, we want to use the high.
Right.
And for reality, hopefully it comes in below that, then we have that bigger margin that Jonathan was talking about. But I like it using the high number for planning purposes.
And Grant, I believe you're looking for some way forward, what to go with this MOU. My perspective, I think we're in good shape now. I don't understand why we would enter into it, but I'd entertain if other council members thought it was a good idea. But moving forward to pay $43 million over 40 years, is that what it was, Keith?
Roughly, yeah.
Just to have the right to the water, and then we have to pay for the water. When right now I don't see the requirement. I mean, it's a good backup to have it. I agree with that, but it just seems pretty expensive for a backup.
And
My thoughts, I'll entertain what everybody else thinks.
I agree. I was making comments about the political, what may be coming down the pike for us down the road. But I think that I think we've done a really good job of, and staff has done a really good job of planning our water to build out. I think we have enough of a cushion. And particularly now that I've heard that the cost coming from Canyon is going to be a third of what is probably coming from Gonzales, I guess. We may want to, if we needed to, we might want to look at other options. I'm not comfortable with the SAWS acreage numbers. I mean, I don't see a bet in there anyway, at this point. If it comes our way, that's great, but I think using the numbers that we have, I think we have a good cushion.
Yeah, I agree, that it's a little high, but, well, a lot high. But I do think that it kind of opens discussion a little bit for how aggressively do we need to pursue other water sources if we choose to hunt out more development deals, you know, where how much more are we gonna need, and how quickly could we theoretically tap what we have if we have 3 more developers come in and say, hey, if you can get us water and it's gonna cost this much and we'll pay this much, you know. So I understand the necessity to, you know, start looking now and seeing what we can find, and hopefully we can find something affordable.
In my understanding, I mean, there's no requirement for us to extend our CCM
True.
beyond the city limits. I mean, that's our choice to make. But you bring up a good point, and it was talked about is the state legislature, who is pro-development, maybe taking away our UDC, our development, our land use, future land use assumptions. If we were to lose that, then all of our future predictions of LUEs is based on current situation, and that would all change. At that time, then yeah, we would be scrambling to find a water source to support currently what we have within our water utility district.
And I just want to, again, I know we probably need to get out of this, but the SAWS interconnect would give us an ability to pump up our system if we needed to, but we have no agreement with SAWS. Is that correct?
Not currently. We would have to bring that agreement back to council for approval as well as to the SAWS board for
Okay.
approval.
So it would be an emergency thing if we lost pressure or something to that.
Correct.
Although this is a big ticket and it's kind of a hit you in the face up front, I think we as a council and the city need to look at, I mean, this is an alternative we need to consider. I'm not saying that this is it, and I'm not saying we should not consider this, because we don't have a whole lot of sources. SAWS may be it, and then controlling our development may be the other source. So I think we need to maybe think about this a bit in total. And I like the work that, Grant, you've done. I mean, it's well done, well thought out, very conservative estimates, and based on what our future land use map and everything. So I feel like we have good information here. And right now, if you look at the chart on 157, I mean, 2038, we start getting close to those reserve numbers. And so if we, I know we can't wait for 2 years to figure this out, because you guys will be underway with your project. So I just think we need to, as you said, Scott, put some ideas on the table here and see what fits best for our city. But I am concerned about our water. That's my big concern, future. I mean, beyond 2035, I mean, 2050 seems a long ways out, but it's not for planning purposes for water. So
Keith, right now, I mean, are you saying that we ought to go ahead and move forward with the MOU?
I don't know. I say we don't have a lot of, I just don't know. I think, what's your thinking, Scott, from what you know and what you and Grant have been working on here? What's your recommendation?
Well, you've seen all the figures and the projections, and as we've mentioned several times, they're conservatively high projections. We're currently using about 2/3 of our current reserve from GBRA, so we still have that much more in reserve, notwithstanding SAWS, notwithstanding this project. We still have untapped, if you will, water in reserve. just really high numbers. As mentioned, the cost to engage in this project would be a little more than double what we're paying per acre foot right now, all in for what we produce, plus what we currently purchase from GBRA. This increment will be on a per acre foot more than double what we're paying right now on the 3 inches. So that's a big ticket.
That's a big number.
That's, as I think you mentioned, that's not counting the actual purchase price of the water. That's just for the infrastructure.
Just the infrastructure, yeah.
For water that we may not even need for 20 years, 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we may not even need it then. If all of our
Yeah,
projections
it was
are accurate.
stated on point well taken, as we can't predict more than anyone else in the room what's going to happen in 20, 30 years from now, but I agree that I think the team has done an excellent job of providing the analysis with the best information we have.
I agree. There is risk out there that we could go forward and we bypass this opportunity. And at some time down the road, we may look at it and go, hey, we wish we'd taken up that opportunity back in 2025. Or who was that council back then that didn't get this opportunity? But, yeah, right. But right now, you just look at it and it's a lot of money that we'd be putting on our utility customers for a service that predicting right now, I'm not sure that we're going to need. And, it's just go back to previous councils that served here that have put us in a good position where we're at today, that we're prepared for the future growth of our city. And I just have to believe if it got that real dire 30, 40 years from now, that somewhere there's going to be another source that would come up that we could help with.
Or we limit development.
Well, true.
That's something we can control if that were an issue. So, if we got too close to using our water, so. I'm not in favor of moving forward with this. My mind is, we've got to figure out we do need to find some insurance here for
Right.
some additional sources, so.
All right. Everybody in agreement with that? A lot of great information.
I appreciate the opportunity.
And thanks for presenting everything, and it's refreshing, like, for me to see sort of this long-term planning to figure out some other sources of water for Texans.
Thanks, Al.
Kept you up there a lot longer than probably what you anticipated, but.
Closer to retirement.
And we have one report from staff tonight, and Kelsey's going to talk to us about a new program she's using to track our projects.
Yes. Good evening, Council. My name is Kelsey Delgado. I'm the project manager for the City of Fair Oaks Ranch. And over the past few months, staff has been researching various project management tracking systems for both internal use through staff, but also something that would allow for a streamlined process to provide the community with progress updates on some of these active or upcoming projects. And so back in May, ClearGov, which ClearGov is the same program that we currently use for budgeting, they launched a Clear Plans Capital Project Tracker. Since this is within the same plan as our program as we use budgeting for, the Capital Tracker tool has the capabilities to sync with the existing capital budget. Since its launch, staff has worked on importing project data and organizing all of the active and
and upcoming capital projects. This evening, I will be demoing this tracker in two ways. The first way will be the back-end user where staff is able to import, update, and include vital information regarding the projects. And then the second part will be providing an overview of what that public side will look like once the project tracker is launched live. So diving right in, this right here on the screen, if I can find my mouse, there it goes. Right here on the screen is that back end where staff is able to create plans. Right now we have our plans separated out by project type. So we have water, wastewater, buildings and other, and drainage, as well as roadway. I did want to make note that though this tracker is called Capital Projects Tracker, it does not exclusively cater to capital projects. You can do non-capital as well. There's just an extra step when doing non-capital since it does not automatically sync with the budget. All of the budget information would just have to be manually entered by the project owner. For this demo, I am going to show y'all two of the projects that are both active currently. One is a capital project and one will be a non-capital. So we'll move straight into it. We'll go to the water plan and then project manager. So on this slide, it lists out all of the capital water projects, and then we can also go to a card view and it gives you a little bit more information as well as an image. We will be looking at both of these projects, but for the purposes of this demo, I will only be clicking and navigating through Willow Wind and Redbud Hill Drive. If you recall, back on July 3rd, Willow Wind, Redbud Hill Waterline, as well as Rolling Acres Trail Waterline were both awarded for construction. On the capital budget, these were actually two separate projects, but due to the nature of the project and how they were very similar in what the needs were, these projects were both designed together and put to award together. And so that's why they're broken out in this way. However, whenever we click into them, they are identical when it comes to the updates that have been incorporated in, since they're following the same pathway. And they're both under contract with the same contractor who's going to complete the construction part of it. So what is shown here is the dashboard for the project itself. It goes over project details as well as some financial information on the side, and there's these various tabs here. All of the information provided in these tabs as well as the settings can be updated, or information can be inputted in by staff to provide more information, and anything that's incorporated in these tabs will also automatically be shown on that public-facing side. So for this project, there are 5 different phases. Right now, we are within procurement. When you click, or when staff clicks on the different phases, it will pop up this that shows the overall progress, as well as the date, start and end date of that specific phase. Down here are the action items necessary or needed to be completed for that phase to be completed and show that it's completed on that public-facing side. Right now, I'll go ahead and click in this. So on this side, whenever you click into a specific action item, this is where staff is able to make those progress and status updates. This one was updated on the 16th, which was yesterday, showing that the contract was fully executed. Moving on to a non-capital project, which would be under building and other. So both of these are non-capital. However, they can be tracked in the same way as capital projects. Only difference is that that budget information was manually entered by the project owner. In this case, these are my projects, so I manually entered in the budget information. I did want to make note of this status right here. So the overall progress shows that the gateway feature is 51% complete. I just wanted to make notice that that status or progress is taking into effect or into consideration all of the phases and all of the action items that from the beginning of the project until now. So that includes design. So 51% of the entirety of the project from beginning to end is complete. If we go into the different phases, construction itself is at 31% complete. Once we navigate to construction, we can see that the overall progress is at 31%. However, if we go into the action items, active construction is at 25%. The last update for the gateway feature was entered in today. Block work is continuing, and the stone work on the pillars will begin tomorrow. So that is an overview of the back end where staff is able to make these updates. Is there any questions so far, or are we good to move over to the public facing side, which I'm sure is what everyone wants to see?
Kelsey, how much benefit does this provide you as our projects officer for monitoring and keeping track of all the projects?
Great question. So the most important part about having a software such as this is that we're able to just streamline the process of updating projects and having that information for internal use. Not only do I have access to that backend, but the rest of staff, whoever has a ClearGov account, can access that information as well, just to streamline, and everyone knows what the process is on these projects. And then on the public side of it as well, whenever any update is inputted in for a specific project by a staff member, that information, once the public portal is launched, that update will automatically show on the public side. So there's not going to be any delay. Anything that's updated will automatically be available for the public to see. So if anyone wants to know what the status of a project is, they would be able to log on or navigate through the city's website to this site and see all of those project status updates.
What are we using? Are you using a certain timeline that the project owner has to input data into the system?
Correct. So all of the dates in there are inputted by the project owner. In this case, some of these projects are mine, so I'm entering that in. And those dates and those deadlines are based off of whatever the consultant's giving us. So for design, the design consultant who's doing the project gives us timelines on when specific action items or phases within the design portion is supposed to be completed. That information is then inputted into this tracker so we can start counting down and updating and tracking if we are still on track to hit these milestones or deadlines.
Are you updating on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, or?
That depends. So for design usually takes a little bit longer. Sure. I can only speak from my personal experience. I'm in all of my projects at minimum once a week, if they're in design. For construction such as the gateway feature, I am making updates in there as soon as I get an update. So that can either be once a week or every couple days.
Okay.
But we have set a prompt, Kelsey, for all projects for at least monthly. So even
Correct.
for projects that are not as active currently as the ones that Kelsey's mentioning, that all of our project managers have to go in and update their project at least monthly. Otherwise they get a nice email prompt and followed by a nasty gram from myself probably after that.
And it's
But
a
that's-
great
but
tool
that-
as long
but
as you
that's
get
the
the
goal,
information
to-
in there, right?
Correct.
To make sure it
yes.
stays current.
So moving on to what the public-facing site would look like. First off, where are you going to be able to find this? So on the city's Transparency Center, there's currently a projects tab on there. If you click that tab, it pulls up a site that has all of our active and upcoming projects as tiles. If you click on those tiles, it pulls up like an overview of what those projects are. Once this public site is launched, that part of the projects, of the Transparency Center projects, would be replaced with this. This is not, as I mentioned, it's not live yet. We are working through a few feature updates with ClearGov, and that takes a little bit of time. So we're hopeful that in the near future, we will be able to launch this live. So once it is live on the Transparency Center, whenever you hit that projects tab, it will pull up a portal similar to what's shown here. All of the projects are listed here on the side. There's a date under here as well. That date is when that project was last updated. So if a user logs on, sees this site, they'll know exactly when the last update was incorporated in for each of these projects. There's also a map here that shows the location of where those active and upcoming projects are within the city limits. For the purposes of this demo, I did go ahead and select Willow Wind. So if you were to select Willow Wind, and Redbud Hill Waterline, it would pull up a project overview page that gives some basic information about the project, including duration, the description, some images of the location, project manager contact information, overall progress, and then some financial. Currently on the Transparency Center, whenever you click on those project tiles, it asks if you would like to, or there's a prompt where you can sign up to receive updates. That will stay the same with this new site. So anyone who's interested in receiving updates or notifications when projects have been updated can do so by subscribing and hitting this button in the corner. There are also these 5 tabs at the top, which I'll go through. The first one is Timeline. Timeline is where you will be able to navigate through to get a little bit more information and detail on where we are within a project. It gives you a timeline of what the design is, or design, procurement, and construction, the duration or the end and start date of those specific phases, and there's also a view details here. I will have to preface, right now it says that procurement is within 65% complete for Willow Wind. It's 100% complete. It was 65% complete whenever I took this screenshot. So if you'd like to see more details regarding where we are specifically within the procurement page, you click view more details, and this sidebar pops up. All of these updates on the side are exactly what staff had inputted in on their side. So anything that they input would show up here as an update within that specific procurement phase. Next is financials. So it goes over the breakdown of the budget based off of phase, how much has been spent out of that phase, as well as where that money's coming from. For this project, 87% is coming from debt. The next 2, I don't have screenshots of them, but I'll show you them. The next 2 tabs are photos and documents. The photos are the same that are showed here on this side. That's just where the overview pulls them from. It's the same. And then documents is whatever staff has uploaded on that front end that's relevant to the project. Normally, in this case, the document that would be up there would be the project sheet. With that concludes the demo of the Capital Projects Tracker. Overall, staff is hopeful in the capabilities of this new program. Not only will it help internally tracking the status of some of these projects, but it will also allow a quicker and more detailed updates on the progress for our residents. Updates staff make on these projects on the back end will automatically be updated and uploaded on the public side once it's launched. And overall, its goal is to streamline that process and aid in transparency of where we are within some of these active and upcoming projects that we have. With that, I'll go ahead and open the floor if y'all have any specific questions regarding the Capital Projects Tracker.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, nice.
Are you going to be the overviewer of the entire?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I'm cracking my whip, making sure everyone gets their updates in.
Kelsey has done a great job of obviously getting the system up and running along with Julie Lovelace in finance, who's our ClearGov guru and set up the framework for all the data entry that Kelsey has kickstarted and our other project managers are now using as well. So the benefits that Kelsey mentioned, we needed both internally as our capital portfolio and through both our GO and CO bond programs have expanded. We needed something better than Excel spreadsheets and Word documents to track our projects. Externally, this will ultimately replace our current transparency portal. It'll be more streamlined service for both us and the public, and they'll all be coming from the same source. So they will reduce that double entry. And for the council purposes, for the last year or two, probably council has expressed a desire to have roughly quarterly or semi-regular capital project updates. So consider this the preview for that process, where going forward, our intention is to use this product to develop ongoing reports, both in written and verbal form for your consumption. And as Kelsey started demo, you'll be able to use this on demand as well. You'll be able to see the dashboards, and if you want to go and see where a project's at, you can go through and click on it.
Check it out.
For getting it,
For live. We don't have a hard deadline yet, but within the next few months.
okay, yeah, I wasn't trying to pin you down, but
Yeah.
be something to be able to use. I think it'd be a great tool.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Thanks, Kelsey. Great job.
Thank you.
Completes all the items that we had on the agenda for tonight. I'll turn it over to council. Do you have any announcements to make? Anybody?
I do not.
I don't have any either. Scott, anything from your end?
Nothing further from me.
Any council members, is there anything you wanted added to a future agenda?
Yes, and you'll have to hold my hand a little bit because I'm not Robert, right? Do you do this by motion?
Oh,
Or
it's
do you just?
You have
okay.
something that you want added to a future agenda?
So on the future agenda, under consideration, I would like us to consider allowing the city to accept electronic bids in its RFP process. Right now, we don't. And the way I understand it, it takes some council action to get that done.
Not necessarily, but we can add that as a discussion, either as a workshop or consideration item soon.
Anybody else? Christine, anything we missed? Anything else we need to cover tonight?
No, sir.
Scott, anything from your end?
Not for me.
I have time now is 8:52 and we are adjourned.